So prior, they did those. And then after the completion of the 6-week program, it was like 6 Saturdays, they took them again. And so all their scores increased. Their wellness increased. Their connection to nature increased. It was really powerful. More powerful, I feel like, were even their words, their own words, them talking about how they're going to bring nature into their daily lives and how it's like they forgot how much they enjoyed this connection with nature and how they can ground themselves. They have strategies with dealing with a lot of the anxiety they were having or stress by being in nature.
That's just a preview of the interview I just wrapped up with Janet MacFarlane, one of my favorite fellow forest bathing guides. I met her over at the International Conference on Nature Therapy that I was at recently, and the project that she was presenting about really wowed me. It spoke to a very specific, very important group of people and how they were able to get incredible impact and incredible results by simply engaging with nature. So check out today's interview, and thank you to Janet for being our very first forest therapy guide interview here on the Project ReWild channel. We're putting these interviews together because we want to expose you at home to forest therapy, nature therapy, forest bathing, and all of the wonderful professionals that are working in this space. I know I have felt incredible impacts in my own life using nature therapy. I've seen the impacts in the lives of the people I've worked with, the people around me, and I'd love for that impact to be felt by you as well. So buckle up, enjoy today's interview, and I'll catch you later. Hey, Janet, welcome to the show. It's so fantastic to have you here. How you doing?
Doing great. It's nice to see you again. It was really nice meeting you at the conference. And I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, I know that you have a background as a forest therapy guide. How did you get into that? Like, where were you before you had this concept of becoming a guide? And then how did that happen?
Okay, so there's a lot of things that come into this. So I'm a yoga teacher, so I teach yoga classes now in my local community. I taught prenatal yoga for many years and postnatal yoga, so moms and babies. I was mostly a stay-at-home mom with my kids, growing up, and just did the yoga thing on the side, which was life-saving mentally. I also do nature photography. I have a strong interest in macro photography and insects and all sorts of things. And you got to be very still and calm when you go out into looking for these things. So, so all these things come together. Then 2020 came along. So 2020 came along, and, it was a time of like, well, what do we do next? And so I started looking into things that are interesting, like I love nature, and I always have. I grew up in the city, right? And I grew up right across the river from Manhattan. So you can just imagine one of the most urban, densely populated areas in the whole country. But we did have a little backyard. We had cliffs that went, the abandoned rail yards that weren't developed yet, and places that were green spaces. And so, I was always attracted to that. I think innately, I think most people are, right? And there's something about it, it gives you water. I love water too, the ocean, the river, just it just gives you something inside, a feeling of peace. And so as I got older, and I live in Michigan now, there's lots of open spaces, and I knew that it's something I wanted to do that's connected with nature. And how do I bring the ideas of yoga, mindfulness, and nature? I came across forest bathing, shinrin-yoku, reading on the internet somewhere. I was like, whoa, this is really cool. And so I delved into it a little bit more, and I found places to train and how do you do it. And then I stumbled across Forest Therapy Hub. And it worked out for my, my schedule, my life. And I connected with that, and I continued and wanted to do the forest therapy course after that. And so once everything was all normal again in life, I was able to do a in-person training as well out in San Francisco. area, like went to the redwoods, and it just felt right. And then I did my project after that, so as part of my certification. So
that's so cool. So I as a mom, you've had experiences with kids outdoors. What kind of aha moments have you had in relation to just seeing kids growing up with that connection, no matter how much nature they have access to, like you were saying?
Yeah, it's funny because, there were times when like we would take them out for like a hike and they'd be like, oh, like the forced march through the woods that they made it seem like. But they all have, like, now that they're all grown, they all have like a true appreciation for nature that, I like, they have that awareness. Like my daughter looks at birds and is trying to figure out what kind of bird things are. And like her dorm room overlooks like treetops. And she was like, this is the best. This is the best. And, our other son's quite the outdoorsman. Like he'll go on mass adventure, go on these crazy adventures. And, our oldest, who just became a dad, he has like a piece of property and he's, cultivating it and taking care of it and like really like connecting. I think kids just sometimes when they grow up with it, they sometimes they may take it for granted, but I think they come back around and say, wow, this is important. This is what I appreciate. This is where, they come back around. I don't know if that makes any sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think it's because we do have that innate desire and draw back to natural spaces. I was just doing some videos the other day about attention restoration theory and how the whole concept of focused attention versus, soft contemplative focus completely recharge our brains and can take us from these spaces of anxiety and nervousness and overwhelm to that peace and that calm, even if just for the time that we're in the forest and then we walk back into the hecticness, but we've reset our brains in a way that gives us that space to, let's just breathe for a minute. But let's segue into the project that you did, because you use natural spaces to help with that reset for a really specific group of people. Tell us about your project.
Okay, so my project was a forest therapy program for women with postpartum mood disorders. The people who participated were all women who had been seeking some help already. So this was like a secondary treatment. Yeah. So they were women who they were referred to me by a therapist and a social worker who, offered it to their clients. And so I had a group of 7 women, and I found a great location that was kind of central to everybody, because you got to kind of make these things accessible and safe and easy. So it's, to help facilitate this process. And so we would meet once a week at this location with wonderful trails, Woldemar Nature Center. And we would go on a forest bathing walk. And then we would do nature connection activities, as well as expressive arts in nature. And each week we focused on a different sense in some of our activities. We also had reflection journals. And I would try to encourage a project or some sort of like nature connection during the week. So they can bring it into their life and keep it with them as the week went on. Prior to beginning the project, I gave them a nature connectedness survey. Mm-hmm. It's from the University of Derby. I can't remember which one it was. It's University of Derby in England, in Great Britain, and the other one was a wellness survey, which is the University of Edinburgh, Warwick wellness survey. And it was a 7-question survey. So prior, they did those. And then after the completion of the 6-week program, it was like 6 Saturdays, they took them again. And so all their scores increased. Their wellness increased. Their connection to nature increased. it was really powerful. More powerful, I feel like, were even their words, their own words, them talking about how they're going to bring nature into their daily lives, and how it's like they forgot how much they enjoyed this connection with nature, and how they can ground themselves. They have strategies with dealing with a lot of the anxiety they were having or stress by being in nature. Also the social component. As moms of young children, sometimes you're really isolated and you don't have those people. You also judge yourself, and it's like that feeling of you're not doing enough. You're not doing it right. So I feel like being in nature, it kind of gives you that there's no judgment, right? Yeah. You have nothing to measure yourself to. You're in the trees, you're in the woods. You're breathing, you're feeling, you're smelling, and there's no one there telling you you're doing it wrong, and you could just be. And it was a beautiful experience, and I really enjoyed seeing how it changed people's perceptions of themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they
absolutely.
reconnected. Yeah.
I'm super curious because mums, you touched on this a little bit. Mums, all unique, all different. We have different time schedules. We have different home lives. We have different responsibilities. We have different cultural backgrounds. We have different abilities and physical abilities. How, other than finding that central location, what other kinds of things did you have to keep in mind just for your specific group of moms?
So, I think it was, I guess we had a fairly diverse group. I mean, for my area where I live, it's not, it's where I live. It's like, I think just kind of keeping things open-ended. Like, it's not about, like, when you're guiding. You're not dictating. It's the same in yoga. You're not telling people this is what you should be experiencing. This is what you are feeling. You got to kind of let the energy of people like dictate what happens next. And I think, when you're coming up with projects and plans, you can't think too much of how it's going to happen. And you're going to have to be willing to change gears as needed. If something's not going to go the way it's going to go. So you're not really, you're taking away, like, you're not going to guide them and say, oh, this is the tree spirit, because that's just not, it's letting it be open-ended and letting people be who they are without judging and fostering that share in such a way that, by the end of this program, I felt like people really opened up. Our last day, like, people revealed things that they never, like, it was like we were brought to tears at one point, and like to have people feel that comfortable with each other to just let yourself be open. I was like, wow. And that was them doing that. That was their energy together,
One thing I found super interesting about your presentation was when your graphs noted that the level of connectedness was like maybe a 3 out of 5 in the middle of their program, but then it went like exponentially higher within those last few sessions. What do you think happened?
I guess it's just that moment of, like, whatever that moment is where you're like, you repeat it enough, and then it's like, And now the more sessions, that sometimes some people couldn't come, like, because whatever, things come up, life happens. And so that's why part of the reason why I wanted to try to create stuff to do at home, for that reason. But the more sessions people attended, the more benefits they got. If that, so it was even like,
absolutely.
wow. Yeah. And
there's this idea that there's this idea that when we go out into the forest for therapeutic reasons, we're like, for the skeptics out there, we just go once and you don't feel any remarkable difference and then you never go back. But it's this idea that no. It's not just the exposure to the natural environment, but it's the structure of the program that you're engaging in as well. It's repeating that same pattern week by week by week. Even though you're changing up the senses, you're saying we have dedicated time that we're devoting to our sensory exploration in an outdoor space. And we're going to do that every single week. And we're going to follow that same framework so that maybe after 5 sessions, many of these women are doing the program again, or modifying pieces of it and taking it into their daily lives. And then fingers crossed, I'm the big optimist out there. So fingers crossed that they're also imparting that love and that experience to their children and their families as well.
Yeah. And that's exactly was the idea and the goal. And like some of them I know got together and like would go hiking together then. And, it's like taking down those barriers and saying, hey, it's okay. You can go out into the woods. You can let go of that, like the monkey mind, as my yoga teacher used to call it. You're letting go and letting yourself just be and experiencing it. I think another point was that, those barriers are broken down between us when you just smell something in nature. There's nothing to that other than the pure sense of like a broken twig from a pine tree, and you're smelling that. And like, everyone's like, whoa, I can't wait to do this with my kids, and have them smell things. And,
that makes me think, like, having this experience with these new moms, you're also imparting a new level of knowledge and appreciation for them to then you're imparting them with new skills for their toolbox as moms that they can then go take and add new ripples to the new pond with. Like, how cool. You're giving them skills that help them feel more empowered in their new position as moms, simply by giving them space outside. Like, oh, I love that.
Yeah. And it's definitely something I think, anytime I do a walk, people, like, even outside of this therapy program, people's like, oh, I forgot how nice it is to just look at the trees, or, oh, this is really close by. I should walk out here more often. It's things like that, that you're like, this already. It's stuff that we already know inside of us,
I do a lot of walks with newcomers to Canada. So they're active back in their previous countries, and they've come and they want to look for new spaces to be back in nature, but they have these preconceived ideas of what the wildlife is. So because Canada does have a lot of big, beautiful forests and bears and things like that, in our particular urban area, they think that we have bears. And that is definitely not the case. So I think it's so much fun, as part of my role is to introduce them to the new wildlife and to those, the knowledge that they need to have to move those false beliefs out of place, so they can feel comfortable in engaging in those natural areas on their own or with their loved ones, without us as guides there, right? Did you have any experiences like that with any of the women in your group that just had a total false belief that was in their head?
Yeah, I think, speaking as women, I mean, to be frank, there was a time when I wouldn't go out for a hike by myself. I came from an urban background, so, natural areas weren't necessarily a good place to hang out in, because it was a little sketchy and there were like kind of shady characters, and so you there's like a feeling of danger, right, associated with being out in the woods sometimes. And a little bit of that, I think it really people were like, well, I can come here. This is a nice place, because we wandered around this whole nature center, for 6 weeks. And, and they really saw that, oh, this is a good place to bring my family. And, and some of them says, yeah, I took my family here last week, after our walk here, I wanted to come to this spot. And so I felt like people felt more empowered to explore the resources around us, because we do have really excellent parks and hiking trails. And, and people felt like, well, yeah, I can go out, or I'll meet up with my friend, or I'll take the kids out and the dog, and,
exactly.
I'll come back out.
And we can begin to make those trails and those forested places and those parks back to being full of people and full of life again, so that we can push the ideas of it being an unsafe place away, because it's populated, it's lively again, and make more of those spaces accessible to people.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I mean, even though I'm not in such an urban area anymore, I feel like that, I have a soft space in my heart for like the urban lifestyle and the urban, like the biophilic designs, and like bringing nature into urban settings. That's so important. You don't need a whole lot like to see nature. Sometimes you could just be outside and look at the flowers and see what insects are on there. And like, you could just watch what's happening right around you. And it doesn't have to be long, just a little bit.
Yeah. I live in a suburban area. So the majority of the people here commute down to the big city every day. So parents have a lot more commuting time on their plate, less time with their kids. But the amount of green space and greenery that we have in our community is remarkable. And we totally don't get to experience it. So as adults, everyone's commuting, so they're blinded to it. They're drinking their morning coffee as they're going through some of the most spectacular train rides in all of urban North America, in my opinion. And then their kids, having worked in the school system and worked with the schools for so long, I am shocked. So there's a school literally in my backyard. We have this incredible forested set of trails and stuff. And these kids never experience any of it. The teachers aren't taking them out past the playground to go see this beautiful wetland as it changes throughout the seasons. They're not taking them on this tiny, short little school walk you can do through the forest in the hotter summer days to get a little bit of coolness in the shade of the forest. It's so disconnected, I'm finding, that I love to find people who are from urban and suburban areas who are finding that joy, those green sparkles, I call it, throughout our lives. Like,
Yeah, it's important. And I feel like you can just inject it into your own days. And I because I do photography, I share a lot of it, and on my Instagram, whatever, and I feel like it's important because I don't do much with it financially or anything, but like I have this idea of like, you start sharing photos of like bees that are like, super tiny, and you can get up close pictures of people like, where did you see that? I was like, in my backyard, and it's like, and then it starts a whole thing where people are like looking around their own yard and saying, oh, what's in my yard? Oh, what plants can I plant that will help encourage this like ecosystem? And, and it's kind of like part of that greater thread. It's like, with very, very little agenda other than sharing and seeing how people can kind of react to it. I got my neighbor to stop spraying her. Like, I never told her don't spray for mosquitoes, but she doesn't spray, and she's all excited about her flowers, and she gets excited when she sees butterflies, and it's really cool.
Yeah. You just have to find the ways to help people see that. And I think macro photography is the way that I learned to see it. My incredible aunt is a nature photographer, and seeing, like, she's out west in the West Coast in BC. And so she would send me these pictures of arbutus trees just of the peeling bark texture and the browns and the greens against each other and all these different close-up views. And at first it was like, ooh, can I figure out what it is? But then it just became a completely new sensory experience of seeing myself in this smaller light, or going out and purposely trying to put on my macro goggles to see what kind of something can I see that you wouldn't see if you just walked by. And those kinds of magical moments were so cool as a kid, and I hate to say it, still are so cool in my day-to-day life. They are so cool.
They are. It's a really good nature connection activity, actually. It's kind of imagine yourself in this as a little creature in this big world, and what does it look like, And you could totally, it's a good creative one, yeah?
I find with forest therapy, the thing that really was my aha moment was I was trained in relational forest therapy through ANFT. So it's very structured, this is how we engage, and we keep that door open. As guides, we're very open. But my background previous to that was in adventure therapy, wilderness therapy, and outdoor recreation. So I teach kids that it's totally okay to jump in the mud puddles. So when I transitioned after doing forest bathing and forest therapy, I was like, wait, I can tell adults it's okay to jump in the puddles too. And that totally changed everything, because it's an invitation to play again, to just be and to see, do we like the mud on our hands or not? Cool. We don't, we can wipe that off. We can find some leaves to help us with that. We can do all of these different things that for some reason as adults we're told that that's not okay to do anymore, or that we don't have time for. But really, that's where the laughter comes. That's where those moments of being silly come, which transition into the most incredible shares in the sharing circles. How did you do sharing circles? Did you do a tea ceremony? Like, how did you wrap up your sessions?
So we did a tea. We didn't do it like, I kind of left some things a little loose around the edges, just because when people wanted to talk, I let them talk because it was important. And usually we would do an activity. So 1 week we did stuff with clay. We made different things and just talked. And another time we did designs with natural materials, and we made our own little spaces and talked about them. And we would definitely do a different tea at the end. The last session prior to ending, we were walking, and I had asked everyone to pick an object up along the way, and put something, something that you want to let go of. And one of the women picked up this giant branch. It was so hilarious. And, we did our whole sharing, and I remember her lobbing it into the river, and it was just so hilarious. I don't know. It was just everything about it was just so yeah.
I am woman, hear me roar.
Yeah. And that session, I had brought all this fruit. I had this bag that could fit everything in it. They called it my Mary Poppins bag at one point because I didn't have everything in it. Oh, well, let me just take that out. And and we did mandalas with fruit. So we had plates, and so we can, and then we got to eat them and and drink our tea. And it was getting warmer, so I had a cold brew type tea, and it was so nice. People were like, oh, this is delicious. And people one woman was like, I can't believe I drank tea. She would never ever drink tea, and she became a tea drinker. And those moments were really nice, having those, and it was, sometimes we'd linger longer than the 90 minutes that we had. We would stay longer and talk more.
I love that idea of using a creative project as a wrap up. Because for those listening at home, one of the important parts of having that kind of closure is because we want to transition people out of their sensory experience back into the world around us but as changed beings, being able to incorporate the benefits that they got when they were in this space in the forest with us or in our natural space. So I like to do tea ceremonies because symbolically, as I was trained, this is a way to incorporate literally into your body the forest. But having a project that enables you to create something in the forest and take it home, that literally gives me goosebumps. I love that idea.
It was definitely, so part of Forest Therapy Hub's training is the idea is bringing expressive arts into these therapeutic situations, and having that incorporated was very helpful because I was trying to encourage a lot of self-care as well. One of my favorite projects we did was I brought in different herbs like lavender and calendula and rose petals and Epsom salts. And so it was like during Mother's Day weekend. And so we did, we made bath salts, like a mixture in a jar, and smelling it, that was a smelling session, of course. So I tried to incorporate the scents with the project we were doing as well. So, but that one was one of my favorites. So, definitely.
Yeah, I'm totally vibing. Is that the word the kids use these days? I don't know. I'm totally into these ways that we can transmit and transform the experience of being in session in the forest into their daily lives, and helping to build that regular daily habit of connecting with nature. And expressive art makes total sense as the right connection. But I want to know, as a yoga teacher, what would you implement connecting yoga and natural spaces for the women you used?
I mean, the most obvious is the breathing. To me, I think that's the most, that is probably the best. If you could take any lesson from a yoga class, it's the breathing, is to find that steady breathing pattern. Learning to relax the muscles, standing in your space. Most forest therapy, you start with a grounding. So much yoga comes. It's hard for me not to use the yoga language in that, And I mean, I guess if you're doing a session where you want to do more movement, sure, you could definitely put some yoga in there. And but for any session, the breath work, the standing still, the lining up, putting yourself into a comfortable standing space, all those little cues. And also reading the energy. My yoga teacher, Hilary Lockwood, she was always like, you got to read the energy of the room. That was her biggest thing. And you don't come in with a plan because you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You have the template. You use the template, but you may be having to shift gears. And to me, that, which she taught me as a yoga teacher many years ago, I've carried that with me into this, because I feel like, that's spot on, because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the weather's going to change, or, you also have to be aware, there's ticks or something, all these scary things that could happen. Let's not hurt ourselves, right?
Or it can be the things that we're actually kind of bringing about when something comes up for someone in our group, and we have to handle that in whichever positive, negative, neutral, whatever. But that flexibility that we need as guides is not a muscle a lot of people get to practice outside of being in a helping space. But it seems to be definitely, it's something that you have to have as a yoga instructor. It's definitely something you have to have as a mom.
I think it's a useful thing to have throughout life. It's like you have to have some balance, right? And you never know. Like, you try to control things. Fine, you can control your reaction, and you may try to guide stuff into a direction. Sometimes you just got to call woof. Okay.
Exactly. Oh, Janet, thank you so much for joining me today. But before we sign off, how can people get in touch with you? How can they stay in your world?
Okay, well, I have an Instagram. It's Connect with Nature LLC, and it's on Instagram. I'm also have a Janet MacFarlane photography page on Instagram, which is just my photos, mostly nature. I
Cool.
don't usually do any personal family stuff on there, so just lots of nature. That's all open. I have a website. It's also Connect with Nature with my name, Janet MacFarlane's the best way to search it because I have like dashes in between because, it's hard to get a unique name these days. So yeah, that's what I'm up to now. And yeah, I'm looking to do some more walks and more sessions. I'm open for people contacting me for groups and retreats. Yeah, I want to do stuff throughout the winter. That's going to be the challenge this year. Through the gray doldrums of January and February. Yeah,
absolutely. But we can do it. We can get people outside.
Yeah.
There's no such thing as bad weather, just bad preparation.
Yes, you need the clothes. You need the warm clothes. Keep telling ourselves that.
Exactly. All right, Janet, I'm going to sign out today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Last question for you is, what is the biggest benefit that you have seen that forest therapy can bring to someone's life?
The biggest benefit, I think it's just keeping nature in your life and using it as a resource to find peace and balance in your existence. Making sense of it all.
Oh, thank you, Janet, so much for joining us for today's episode. This conversation really struck home with me. Your project was so fantastic. So first off, if you're here because Janet sent you, why not shout us out down in the comments? And of course, you can always watch us and all of these wonderful episodes and interviews over on the Project ReWild YouTube channel. You can always listen to us on podcast format on your favorite podcast platforms. But if you're listening, specifically for those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, please give us a review because that helps us reach more people. And the reason we've put this whole show together is to get the message out about nature therapy to more people. So if you can help us out in that way, it doesn't cost you a single dollar. And while you're at it, if you haven't already, go follow Janet on Instagram. The links are down in the description. Her photography is inspiring, and I would love to see your photography as well. Again, personal invitation. Join us in the ReWild community. Those links are down in the description as well. So thank you so much. I will see you in our next episode. Until I do, remember I love you, be excellent to each other, and I'll see you in the forest.